The history of the church in Zambia has many spheres to it. Missionaries from different congregations trooped from around the globe to bring the good news to the country. The purpose of the missionaries was to evangelize the gospel of Jesus to the people in Zambia. On today's edition of News in Depth, Effie Mphande focuses on the Catholic Church and establishes whether this is the end of the missionary era in Africa and particularly in Zambia.
The history of the church in Zambia has many dimensions to it. Missionaries from different congregations came from faraway land with one mission: to preach the word of God. Many came in the 1800s. For instance, in the southern part of Zambia, the Catholic mission activity was undertaken by the Jesuit fathers in the early years of the 20th century. 1905 was the beginning of the Catholic Church in Lusaka and southern part of Zambia.
Yeah, because the Jesuits were kicked out of Mozambique in 1911.
Father Jim McGloin is a Jesuit priest, and he first came to Zambia in 1969. He recalls the number of local priests at that time.
When I came to Zambia in 1969, I think we were about 130, 140 Jesuits. Three of them were local Jesuits. The late Bishop Lungu, he was a novice at the time, Father John Chula, and Father Felix Kalebwe. All three of them have died. And it wasn't until the 1980s that we started getting larger groups of Jesuits to join, of local Jesuits. Since that time, we're about 100 Jesuits in Zambia now. I'd say 60% are local Jesuits, though most of them are still in formation. They're still doing their studies for priesthood.
Worked in Canisius for 2.5 years.
But Father Michael Kelly came much earlier to Zambia, northern Rhodesia then.
Well, when I came first, there were no Zambian Jesuits. When I came back in 1963, there were 1 or 2 Zambian Jesuits, that was all. But the majority of here were the external Jesuits from Ireland, from the United States, from Canada, and from Poland. But that has changed entirely now. This is now a Zambian province, or a Zambian Malawi province, and most of the Jesuits now are from Zambia or from Malawi. And I suppose I'm kind of in between, because I'm no longer an Irish citizen, I'm a Zambian citizen, so I am a Zambian Jesuit, which is a very good thing.
Effie.
Hello, Father.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah.
How have you been?
Very
Father
well.
Charles Searson came to Zambia 7 years after independence.
Cameron's good.
He was 25 years at the time.
We came with a message of Jesus. We're missionaries, so we come with a message of love, of evangelization. I think Zambians are very religious people, even today. And we didn't bring God, we didn't bring Leza, but we brought a belief in Leza incarnated in Jesus. And that message fitted in very well with the local culture. So I think the major achievement of the church in Zambia is just so many people willingly and joyfully accepting the gospel and living it.
The missionaries of Africa, commonly known as the White Fathers, had come earlier to the northern part of Zambia.
From 1891 till today, or till 20 years ago, the missionaries were coming into Zambia. Today the Zambian church has grown such that there are even Zambians who have become missionaries going out. Like, for instance, myself, I am a missionary. Myself, I spent most of my time in Ghana, working as a missionary from Zambia into Ghana. And at the moment, for us as missionaries of Africa, we have 22 Zambians who are in our congregations, priests and brothers, working in different parts of Africa.
Before proceeding with ordaining Emmanuel Nshimbi, the bishop is going to question him about his readiness and willingness to take this responsibility.
Do you promise respect and obedience to your ordinary?
I do.
Today, more local priests are joining the vocation. But how difficult was it to attract them into missionary work?
Still difficult to persuade them. It's difficult, not exactly to persuade them because that's the work of the Spirit of God, but to attract them into ourselves. We would like to attract many, many more. We'd like to attract hundreds into our congregation and into all of the other religious bodies as well as into the diocesan priesthood. And that was difficult.
It is difficult to attract people to missionary way of life, in the sense that the challenge of leaving one's home for a serious reason and a serious, considerable period of time is very, very huge. So many people are attracted to becoming priests or brothers among us, but when it comes to leaving Zambia for long periods of time, they think twice.
I suppose it's hard and easy at the same time. It's hard because it's quite a big sacrifice. As I said, everybody is wired to have a family. So to give that up, you need to have something well worthwhile as an alternative. Myself, I was a vocation promoter, and I found people would listen to you, especially if they heard you speaking and say, "This man looks happy. This man enjoys what he's doing. Maybe I could become like him."
When did local priests begin to take over? This is the question I asked Father Kelly.
Our first Zambian provincial, or Black Jesuit provincial, well, he was Malawian, was Peter Buonale, Father Peter Buonale, and he took over control, what would it be, 9 or 10 years ago now. And then in 2011, Father Emmanuel Mumba, the first Zambian provincial, he took charge in 2011. So it's not very long ago. It's within this 21st century that all of this occurred. And so we might say that 21st century is the century of the Zambians in charge in their own homeland and in their own household.
Many successes have been recorded, but what are some of the achievements made by the missionaries?
We have managed to integrate into different cultures and learn different languages and mentalities, and from there I think we have inspired many people to become what they are: better Christians, better human persons, more according to Christ's wish. I think that is certainly an achievement what we can look at. Even institutions and like schools, like hospitals, all these have been achievements because of the mission that we had. And I think we have been able to make people more generous towards one another.
The achievement's different on different levels. Father Moreau, in starting Chikuni Mission, he was very much a farmer himself, and he was interested in farming, and he saw how there was starvation oftentimes in that area. So he introduced the ox-drawn plow in Chikuni, which had a huge effect on the farming, not only in Chikuni, but also in the southern province. So the production of food increased tremendously once the Tonga started using the plow.
Oh, well, the biggest achievement is that we have become a Zambian province. That's the biggest achievement, that we have so many Zambians amongst us. But the achievements also are that the faith, the Word of God, the message of God has been so well received and integrated into the lives of the people.
Today, Zambia has more local priests than before, and many of them are beginning to be in charge of the local church. Father Emmanuel Mumba is one of them.
The achievement that our local people have been bringing to this atmosphere is the ability to sort of help our local people digest this faith in a local way. Okay, I'm sure you have heard of enculturation, okay, where this faith came to us as something that is foreign, and then it was brought to our people, and then I think it has been on the shoulders of the African clergy, the local clergy, who have been to school, to now begin to help the local church to digest and make palatable this faith which was brought from outside. Okay, so I think we have been the agents of enculturation ourselves.
Father Charles Chilinda is also a Jesuit priest. He comes from a religious family. Father Chilinda is conducting Mass at one of the local parishes. We spoke with him earlier.
Let me give you an example. At the moment, if you take the reality of the Catholic Church, I think there's only one local, foreign bishop, the Bishop of Monze, who is retiring anyway next month. So if you talk about the episcopate, it is going to be mostly Zambians, and younger Zambians as well. Some of them in their 40s and even maybe early 40s. If you talk about the Society of Jesus, which I know very well, when I entered the Society of Jesus, there were only 3 Zambian Jesuit priests. Only 3. Yeah. And there were very few of us in the novitiate. But now, the majority of the Jesuits are Zambians or Malawians.
For some of the local priests, this was a difficult task.
When I entered the society, there were 4 of us Zambians who entered. I'm alone now, out of that group. Huh?
What happened to the others?
They left. They left on the way. All of them happily married.
I cut up this little boy there and put him on top of the world. Like human beings are supreme.
But there are some who are still committed to service. Archbishop Telesfo Mphande is one of them. He has been an ordinary priest for 41 years and 27 years as a bishop.
Look, in Zambia, or the Archbishop of Kasama, or the Bishop of Undola, you see a Zambian on top. He is the leader. He is the chief shepherd, okay? But then he cannot work alone. He needs priests. He needs the religious, men and women. But when you see so many of the priests and religious who are expatriates, then you say, well, we are not doing so well. We could do better, but we are doing our bit. So to the proportion of outsiders as opposed to local people is such that we have more outsiders as at this present moment than local Zambians. And soon it is going to change, but that is a period of development. You know, we are dealing with a teething problem.
With more local priests joining the vocation, Does this mean this is the end of the missionary era?
Yes and no. In one sense, yes, it is the end. I think you've already talked to my colleague, Father Michael Kelly, who's 85 years of age this year. I'm a little bit younger. I'm only 67, still full of life. But by and large, the average age of the foreign missionaries is going up. We're getting older, and quite a few have either gone home because of sickness or old age and have ended their days back where they come from. Quite a few have ended and are buried in Chukuni or in Kasisi. The early missionaries, I suppose myself included, our dream would be bury your bones in Africa. So in that sense, as a group, we're getting older. There are very few, shall we say, younger missionaries coming to join us from overseas. So it's the end of one era, but it's the beginning of another. Just as I was coming to meet you, I met Mr. Peter Banda. He's a Zambian Jesuit scholastic on his way to being a priest. So here's a new era.
It's the beginning of the end of a missionary era. Okay, as you're aware, over slightly 100 years ago, the first missionaries came to Zambia, and they brought what we normally refer to as the primary evangelization. So they came to plant the seed in Zambia of faith. Okay, so at that time, they took it that our people didn't know much about God. So they were bringing God, they were bringing Christ to our people, okay, in the primary evangelization. I think we've gone beyond that stage now, in that our people know Christ and they know God and they know how to express Him within themselves and to others. Okay, so on that note, I could say maybe the missionary impetus to bring primary evangelization is over. But the missionary era of the missionaries coming to Africa and to Zambia and trying to be the custodians of the faith and trying to be the pioneers and the ones who are doing everything for the people in Zambia, I think is coming to an end now. Most of the missionaries are phasing away. Okay, they're phasing away and they've grown old and they've gone. They've done a good job, but I think they've done their part. And slowly but surely, Zambians and the local clergy are taking over the evangelization.
Now, I don't think that everybody knows the good news as it is supposed to be known, and the mission of Christ, His words, are still necessary to think about, talk about, explain. Certainly there have been big changes in the world, so the mission of Christ is changing all the time, and it will change again. This is not the end of a mission, but is a chapter. Chapters are turned and new chapters come, because the world where the mission is supposed to be known and lived especially is changing. So I don't think the mission of Christ is finished, but I suppose we have to rethink and also reword to that mission in our times and in our cultures, in our habits and in our ideas.
That mission era is over. Now what we have is establishment and enshrining the local church as a people. And we are now the ones who are influencing the universal church because we have got a particular contribution for the universal church in the way that we articulate theology, for example, because we've got scholars in theology.
The era of mission of foreign missionaries coming into Zambia has coming to a close, or it has closed, you might say. The era of mission is not finished because there is still the prospect and the room for Zambians, priests, religious, other religious as well as Jesuits, to go outside Zambia and bring God's word to people outside of Zambia.
It is a turning moment where the two continue complementing each other. There will still be foreign missionaries in Zambia. And for instance, in our presence here in Zambia as missionaries of Africa of today, We have about 50 missionaries here coming from about 16 different nationalities. That will continue. So I don't want to call it the end of the era of the foreign missionary, because they'll always be there. They have changed, they've evolved. They used to be mostly Europeans and Americans. Now there are more African missionaries. Congolese and Burkinabes are around. And Asians, Indians and Filipinos are around. Surely I agree with you that it's a new era in the sense that the composition of missionaries has evolved, and including Zambians. New era in the sense that even the Zambians are going out.
Yes, you can say slowly this missionary era is ending. You can see the leadership of the church is now mostly Zambian, whether it is in the Catholic Church, in the Christian churches in Zambia, in the Zambia Evangelical Fellowship. You see that it is the local leadership that is there. So in a way you can see this is coming to an end. It hasn't ended yet, but this is only the beginning of missionary work, of the missionary church, because we too have to be missionaries to our own people. And as I say now, there are many Zambians who are serving abroad.
How have the missionaries shaped the political and social status of Zambia? This is the question I asked Dr. Houston Chiputa, a historian at the University of Zambia.
Formal education, as we know it today, began with the missionaries. And missionaries of all shades, the Catholics and the Protestants. So because of that, then one would want to say that the missionaries have contributed a great deal in shaping the kind of society, the kind of literate society that we have in Zambia today. And they continue to play a very significant role, although of course now many of them, particularly the white missionaries, have left. But we still have missionaries in the form of Zambian missionaries and other missionaries from other places. So yes, socially they have played a very significant role in the education system. On the political front, the first people that took up the mantle to fight for independence in Zambia were missionary educated people. If one would want to say that the Lubwa missionary educated people like Donald Swale and others, David Kaunda, the father to our first Republican president, Dr. Kaunda, and other people that were educated at Lubwa Mission, and others were educated, of course, at Mbereshi, were educated at Kanishas, were educated at Sefula, and many other parts of Zambia where missionary education took root very early, played a very, very important role in the struggle for independence and eventually in achieving independence and leading the country out of colonial rule towards the development state that we have today.
Zambia has become a religious country, and on Sundays, the streets of Lusaka are almost empty. Is there anything to learn from missionaries historically?
First and foremost, selflessness. Because the people that came first came to a country that had no roads, came to a country that had no cars as we know them today, not even bicycles. Of course, eventually, later on, people began to have bicycles. But mostly, the very first missionaries, Bishop DuPont, Father Moreau, and many others like those that set up the Rusangu Seventh-day Adventist mission in Monze. Most of those people gave up whatever they were doing wherever they came from to come and assist in reshaping the lifestyle of people in these parts of the world. Because people thought then in Europe that unless people were literate, unless people lived like Europeans, they were not civilized.
Ordinary citizens also had their own understanding of the missionaries. Was it necessary for missionaries to come to Zambia?
Indeed, I feel it was necessary because a lot of things that we as the current generation really enjoy that accrued to them. If I look at some of the missionaries like David Livingstone and others who set up missionaries, we find that formal education was introduced to Africa, and we can see the impact of formal education on our society now. And that is all because of these missionaries.
Very much, because the time they came, like they brought in education, Christianity. Yeah, at least we're civilized now.
I think it's okay because I've built some schools, some churches, and we're benefiting.
Developed countries are becoming less religious, and today not too many are willing to sacrifice. Perhaps Africa will be the next missionary point, with many of the African priests, sisters and brothers taking the good news to the rest of the world, which continues to long for peace and unity.
The direction will change, will shift. We'll see more and more Africans or priests and religious from the so-called developing world going to evangelize in the developed world. Okay, that is generally. And for me, speaking as a Jesuit, I think that is something that we have been preparing for in the Society of Jesus. And the Society of Jesus is a very big organization with over 17,000 men. Okay? And the same challenge that we're experiencing at the level of the church is the same that we're experiencing within the Society of Jesus. So we have numbers going down in Europe and America, and the numbers going up in Africa. And so we have already been preparing, okay, to deal with that problem. Okay? So as Jesuits, we form our men in such a way that they're able to work here in Zambia and Africa, as well as to be ready to be missioned outside Africa and to work outside in Europe and America, or wherever there is need in the Society of Jesus.
When all is said and done, the story is about spreading the good news.
Well, that's all we had for you on today's edition of News in Depth, as we were looking at the end of the missionary era in Zambia. Remember, you can send us feedback on this program through social media platforms, Facebook and Twitter. Join us again next week with another interesting edition of News in Depth. Thank you for watching. Goodbye and God bless you.